Hey man, welcome back. Doing a short little podcast. Gonna try to turn out two or three of these today. These are gonna be relatively short though. They're kind of just gonna be more like videos, but in the format where you can't really see me because they're more, efficient to make. But this is gonna be about my thoughts on music this past year. I think music this past year was pretty weak per se. I don't think any artist really dropped any of their best work. Um, SOS by SZA was a great album. Metro Booming's album was really good. But we saw a lot of rappers drop this year. Drake dropped twice. One was a miss. One was pretty good. Her Loss was a pretty good album. I like a lot of the songs on that album. Kendrick dropped this year, and the album was mid. I don't really go back to the album ever. Um, I think that music really just had a huge, deep decline, and I think it's because so much music is being dropped that it's hard to have an original flow, an original beat, and an original rhythm that sounds like your own, to where you're not being like, oh, he's the next Lil Baby, he's the next Gunna, he's the next Young Thug. And I think that's the problem with rap nowadays. I think it's just so easy for people to compare because there's so much music out. I think that there's too many options now, and that ideology eventually hurts music because now you can't listen to any artist without thinking, "Oh, he reminds me of this one guy. Oh, he reminds me of this one guy." I think music has kind of has the MCU effect now, where part of the music is dropping in a name, and people are like, "Oh my God, he mentioned this guy. Oh my God, he mentioned this guy." And a great example I'll bring up is Drake and Megan Thee Stallion when he said the line about shot her in the foot, but she's still a stallion, or the line about Ruby Rose where she's a 10, but she sounds good on mute. Those are kind of lines that it's like, oh my God, it's like a cameo in an MCU movie that has all the fans hyped for 5 minutes, and then at the end of the day, you forget it because it wasn't necessarily that good. Music nowadays isn't, or the music that dropped this year wasn't really that good. There were a couple of good, great songs that came out of this year that I will definitely have on my playlist. But if you go over and you really go over music that dropped this past year, there's nothing that really catches your eye. There's nothing really eye-boggling. And I think that's the problem that we have with music, that it gets so stale because there's not that much original, sources to come by. There's been so many songs made that there's so many beats that we're starting to get beats like the Bikini Bottom beat that Ice Spice had. We're getting beats that are weak. We're getting beats that aren't the best. And I think that's one of the reasons why Yeet blew up so much, because he was using beats that were a little different. He was using more bells and different types of uh different types of production when it comes to music that helped amplify his voice. And I think that's why a lot of these underground rappers, when you talk about Summers and SSG Kobe, uh, Slim Six, and all these rappers. That's why a lot of people get them mixed up because number one, they all came out around the same time, and number two, they all really kind of sound the same. We don't really get rappers anymore that sound different, that have their own different type of finesse and suave with the way they do things. And that's why I also think Lil Nas X blew up so much, because Lil Nas X, he was different. Even though he wasn't really a rapper, he's more of a pop singer. I think that because of the way he did things different, and because he was smart, and he used his ability to keep himself in the media along with make good hits that you can replay over and over and over again. I think that was what makes him so unique. And what makes Drake so unique is because when he started, people weren't doing it like him. Now, music has changed, and now he has to evolve, and now he's taking steps back instead of taking steps forward in his creative design when it comes to his music. I think that with an artist like Kanye, who hasn't really dropped a classic album since The Life of Pablo, which is going to be 7 years old in 2023, I think that the biggest problem that you see is that there's so much music out there. Creativity is almost flawed because you're listening to all this music and then you try to make something and then it's like, oh, that's already been made. I think that music has become so bland this year because there's so much dropping and everything almost sounds the exact same. What I really want next year is for them to stray away from the MCU type beat. I really want artists to more step out of their comfort zone and progress along with their creativity and make music that really defines them instead of making music that defines what fans want to watch or what anybody else wants to hear, and more making music that's just and really just not changing their flow, but finding one that really sounds good on a personal level and on a personal level for fans, something that fans can listen to and really feel in their heart. I know that My Dark, Beautiful, Twisted Fantasy from Kanye was a super passion project that he felt like he had to do after the whole Taylor Swift thing, but it's still an album that is a classic, one of the best albums of all time. I miss that type of music. I miss that era. I miss the type of music where you could listen to music and you can tell the distinctions. You can tell the distinctions within artists and the way that they rap and the way that they sing and the way that they transition and the way that they produce their the beats that they use and the beats that are engineered for them. I just miss that creativity and I miss that poise from the greatest artists. Right now we have artists like J. Cole that have, when he dropped in 2021, he made an album that was kind of iffy for me because I felt like I felt a lot of these concepts before. A lot of these concepts have been done. A lot of these beats have been kind of done. Now, of course, his lyricism is on a whole nother level that you can't really compare. But when you talk about the way that music is shaped nowadays, it's more shaped towards radio rap, and that's why most of the stuff sounds the same because radio rap has a certain type of distinctions that a lot of people are following now, and rap doesn't sound the same. Jack Harlow dropped an album that was complete utter garbage because most of the music kind of just sounded like everybody else's but worse. And Jack Harlow to me is a really good artist. I think he could be one of the greatest. I think he could be a really good artist, but he kind of just doesn't push the boundaries. He had Churchill Downs with Drake. That was a great song, one of my favorites. I think best, one of Drake's top five best features of all time. But then after that, where do you go? To Nail Tech, to all these other songs on the album that just don't sound nearly as good. And then when you really look at the creative standpoint that artists are coming from nowadays, like I said before, it really all feels the same. Everybody feels glued together and intertwined in one circle rather than everybody making their own path for themselves to go and find out what sounds good for them and what also would sound good for fans. Really what makes a passion project. And I think that's why SOS from SZA sounded so good because SOS sounded different, it sounded new, it sounded refreshing, and it was promoted well, of course, on like apps like TikTok and stuff. So the album obviously did a lot better than you'd expect, but it was just a more of a more of an album that you just feel more because it's different. And judge me or not, I like Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift dropped her album and it sold so well. And I think the one thing that makes Taylor Swift different is that while she's a great artist, she's competing with artists that almost sound the same. She's a singer. So when you hear her, it sounds so different that you want to hear more. That is why she had over 1 million first week sales. Taylor Swift is one of the most influential icons when it comes to music in this world, and she's not someone like Kanye who has to use his words and his fashion to become out there, or like Drake who uses his likeness and popularity. No, she kind of goes based on her music, and that's no shade to Kanye or Drake. They're one of my favorite artists, but I feel like the music has kind of taken a dip, and that's also I think why a big reason why I like the rapper MF Doom, rest in peace. But I feel like the creativity standpoint that we see nowadays in rappers, it's not as it's not as fluid anymore. I think it's more influenced based off of the other things that we've seen from other artists and from other rappers that they're trying to implement. And I think that's why all the rap sounds the same. And nothing really stood out for me this year besides a couple of albums that I already named. Metro Booming's album sounded really good, but again, he uses multiple artists because he's a producer. And then SZA's album also was one of my favorites of the year. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to rant and talk about how, I'm feeling about the way that music has been this year because I didn't this year for music really felt slow. Next year we have a lot of albums that are expected to drop. I know Travis Scott is expected to drop next year. Tyler the Creator is on pace to drop next year if he goes by his normal, drop schedule every other year. But I really just feel like this was a down year for music and creativity in music, and I really just hope next year we can get artists that are stepping outside the box and making music that sounds, great for them, and music that sounds great for us as fans, so we can really listen to and enjoy. And the reason why I say it for us is because when you think about a body of work like Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers by Kendrick Lamar, that album was made for him to be a therapy session, but there's a lot of songs in the album that I skip. Almost a lot, actually, more than half the album that I skip because they're not, to me, that great of songs. To me, they're more just feeling like I'm interrupting him. And that's the one thing that I really don't like. So I personally think that music took a step down, and I think that it went quantity over quality. And I really hope that the music industry fixes that because I really miss some of the original rap that we had that really spoke to the community and spoke to others and really inspired others rather than having the same rap that everything sounds the same or the same music where everything sounds the same, everything sounds stagnant, and really there's not much variation. But yeah, that's really all I have for y'all today. Peace.